Welcome back to another video. Today let's talk a bit about the rotation, the opener, what's changed, and just how Shadow Priest feels and operates in Cataclysm Classic. Now, if you've already played it in the previous expansion, you'll be familiar with the general feel and vibe, but certainly a few things have changed going into this one. We've had new cooldowns added, new talents, and new systems and buffs to play around and adjust to. So, right out the gates, let me show you the fact that Shadow Weaving is removed. Beforehand, that was a case of wanting to stack it up as quickly as possible to buff up our Shadow Word Pain. If we used a pre-pot Wild Magic, we'd then also be praying that a Warlock or a Mage was using their Scorch or Shadow Bolt to empower the crit damage even further. All of this combined allowed us to snapshot a massive Shadow Word Pain. I'm sure a lot of you, like myself, would have had a week or that showed whether or not the Shadow Word Pain was as strong as it could be. On top of that, you could snapshot it even further with certain buffs like the Malygos Power Zones or, Iron Council, whatever it may be. There was plenty of ways to eke out just that extra bit of damage. Shadow Word Pain, though, is actually completely changed, and it's no longer that big heavy hitter that is just going to tick on down throughout the entirety of the fight. Now it's actually used at the very beginning of your rotation to try and fish for what's called Shadow Orbs. Now, let us show you what this is. It's the brand new change going into this expansion. You'll see here, you have an 18% chance when you use your Shadow Word Pain or a Mind Flay to grant one stack. Now, when you use a Mind Blast or a Mind Spike, it consumes this. It's then going to empower your periodic spell damage by 28%. Now, periodic spells, as you can imagine, is all your dots, but it also does empower things like Mind Flay as well as Mind Sear, which is very important to keep in mind. We'll talk about that a little bit later. On top of this, you've then got a second buff to try and activate, which is Evangelism. So every time we're using Mind Flay, we're buffing up by a further 2%, and this stacks up to 10% in total. So a near 40% boost to all of your pretty cool spells is certainly nothing to ignore. So you may have seen in Discords or in gameplay yourself that it makes a bit of a difference if you have had a Shadow Orb or not. If you're unlucky, maybe you hit Mind Flay 4 or 5 times in the opener, nothing happens. You're just sitting there thinking, well, this kind of sucks. I'm doing no damage at all. If there's another Shadow Priest in your raid, they did get lucky with the RNG. They're going to absolutely skyrocket up the meters, and you're going to be left lagging behind. If that happens, it is what it is. It's just the RNG behind it. I've seen certainly some people discuss whether or not it's worth just sending all your dots at the very start. Look, I think if you're looking to try and pass and do big damage, you just take the gamble. You always run the RNG every single time and just pray that you get that Shadow Orb in the first 2 Mind Flay ticks. Or first 2 Mind Flay casts, rather. So, a lot of information. Try not get too lost with this one. I'm not really sure the best way to present all of this, but I'm just going to try and, dump as much information on you guys as possible. I'm sure if there's any questions of things that did not make sense, you can ask me in the comments section below. But let me show you a bit of a general opener here. I'll try and commentate my way through it, just so you can keep online with me. So, we'd open up with Mind Spike, which does a lot of single target damage. You'll note, though, that if we cast this, it is going to get rid of all of our dots. That's why we're going to use it in the opener and not later on. So we'll open up with that into Shadow Fiend, put the Shadow Word Pain out, pop all of our cooldowns to try and fish for an orb even quicker. We've got it there, getting 5 stacks. Let's consume it. Let's buff up our dots. Everything's procced, right? Berserking Racial, all of our trinkets. We've got Hurricane. I'm waiting for Mind Blast to come on cooldown. Let's consume all those Evangelism stacks. Let's go for Archangel. And now we're just doing so much single target damage. You can see the Vampiric Touch meter down there telling me when I can renew it. No longer do we need to wait for all these dots to completely expire. We can actually recast them within the second to last as well as the last tick. And that way it's carrying over what would have remained into that new dot. So this is a bit of a change up if you weren't aware of this. Now you know it's going to do a lot more damage, and you can see here then it just becomes about maintaining everything, right? You're always hoping that you get a lot of Shadow Orbs, you keep the Mind Blast going, your dots going, you keep the 5 stacks on Evangelism as well. And you can see from my UI it blinks or the color changes, even on the nameplates as well, letting you know when you can look to utilize that pandemic window and empower things again. So that's basically the general opener in terms of sort of how the rotation would play itself. It's maybe a bit of a piano sequence at the start with a bit of RNG weaved into it, but once the fight gets going, the ball is rolling, it's almost like, you know, you're spinning multiple plates, especially when there's a lot of targets around, making sure they've all got dots up, that you're Mind Flay, tab targeting to keep Shadow Word Pain refreshed, because Shadow Word Pain doesn't get snapshot in the same way that Vampiric Touch and Devouring Plague does. Every time you Mind Flay, it dynamically updates the stats that go into it, so you don't need to worry. I will say, though, there's a few little tips and tricks that we can add on top of this. First of all, how do we weave in Shadow Word Death? Well, let's show you, because first of all, you'll see here that every time we take 10% or more of our total HP with Shadow Word Death, we're going to gain some mana back, which is really, really helpful. On top of this, we then have the glyph in Spirit Tap, which means if we actually kill the target, get the killing blow, we'll also get some mana back as well. Now, during a fight, what I like to do, and I used it a fair bit on the Alakia fight, those ads come out, they need to get low enough at a certain point for them to keep the buff stacking, especially in Heroic. You would tab target to them when they're below 25%, that way you can Shadow Word Death 2 times, and not only do you get the mana back from the Masochism, you've also got a chance of getting the Spirit Tap proc as well. And this can be really, really helpful because in some fights, mana can be a bit of an issue, and you will have to weave in Shadow Word Death where applicable. Obviously, at 25%, it does the most damage. Bear in mind, though, there are certainly some fights out there where if you Shadow Word Death, you may just one-shot yourself. Like Halphus, for example, a ton of buffs go on top of him. You do so much more damage than any other fight. And as a result, you may just one-shot. So take everything with a grain of salt, apply it situation by situation, and you'll be A-OK. The one thing I would say is, and I think maybe it's more relevant for 5-mans, and especially during the leveling process, is that at level 80, obviously you've got the best gear, all your stats are fantastic, tons of haste or whatever. As you level up, things are going to feel a little bit more rough, and spending mana on dots probably is just not going to cut it anymore, because all that mana spent doesn't equate to the amount of damage that is done. You're running in between packs, you're constantly drinking, it feels pretty rough. Obviously, you have things like Shadow Fiend and Dispersion to use from pack to pack to keep you going and make sure you're never having to really stop, stand, and you know, drink up and keep going. But I would say that the best application is going to be that if you're leveling, Mind Spike, that empowers the Mind Blast by a further 60% crit damage, also makes it an instant cast. Boom, we're doing a ton of damage. Maybe you finish off with one more Mind Flay into a Shadow Word Death or a double death to execute them at the end. That way, you're doing a ton of single target burst damage. Your mana should never really be an issue, and you're able to quickly you know, go through the packs, go through the quests, whatever it may be. This certainly has a bit of application during boss fights. If there's an ad that's super low, and it's not enough to justify using Mind Sear, then maybe you just double Mind Spike into Mind Blast. And yeah, you just do so much priority burst damage, you're going to keep up with everybody else. One thing I will note, and we mentioned it just briefly before, is that you know, Mind Sear is considered a periodic spell as well, right? All these different techs, they get considered. So much like we mentioned how important Shadow Orbs and Evangelism are, certainly going to actually come into effect as well when you're doing AoE damage. So, for example, let's put the Shadow Word Pain up. Let's just fish for a Shadow Orb. We've got our 5 stacks of Evangelism here. We're Mind Flaying, we're losing to RNG. There we go. If we pop this, all that extra damage, that 40% boost that I mentioned before, is now going to affect our Mind Sear. So if the tank's doing a massive pull, you know, 10 plus mobs, whatever it may be, as long as you have this buff up, you're going to be doing a ton of AoE damage to try and keep up with everybody else in their group. I've seen a few people complain that Shadow Priest sucks in 5-mans, which is certainly true to a degree. You just got to adjust how you play it. So a lot of the times I'm just running into a pack going, you know, Shadow Word Pain, making sure that I'm not lagging behind. So I'm constantly moving, spamming instant casts. This way, I can weave in a Mind Flay to maintain this Evangelism. I'm constantly, because of all these Shadow Word Pains, fishing for those Orb procs, and then I'm hitting Mind Sear just to do insane amounts of damage. So yeah, there's obviously a few things to take into consideration there between what your opener could look like, the rotation in general, and how to apply as much AoE as you can. But I would say that for the most part, Shadow Priest operates very similar to how it was in Wrath of the Lich King. You've just got a few more buffs, a few more cooldowns to manage and maintain. Let me know if this was helpful, if I spoke too quickly, if I didn't cover things enough in greater detail. Drop it all in the comment section below, and we'll catch up next time.